with Tracey Kennedy. We are live on Revolution Radio, Freedom's Lips, sounds dirty, .com, Studio A, Channel A. Hope you guys can hear me. And, of course, TurdlineTheNews.info. So, I hope you guys are doing well. We've had pretty much constant apocalyptic. So, about the apocalypse, holy crap, guys. I had one plan today, and then Patty sent me this amazing article from the 60s that pretty much says exactly what's going on. Our brothers and sisters in the States, we're going to have to deal with you right now because they've been spraying lithium and other psychoactive substances over Oregon. Plus, there has been a mass spraying all over the United States. This could have something to do with the light show that NASA had up to. That was mostly lithium and ethylene bibromide. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So if you are coughing and hacking, it's not your imagination. They've just done something to us. So why don't we start with that hot mess? What do you say? And it goes with some of the other stuff because I want to finish about the goo today and the Queen of Heaven. I have this image of a relatively pristine Earth. Now I got this from Geoengineering Watch. You'll find that on our page, but the image is a relatively pristine Earth taken from allegedly Apollo missions from 1969 to 1972. The Earth floats like a beautiful blue, white jewel in space. No haze or strange luminosity covering it. Now that was before the chemtrails, so we were doing pretty good till 1972. Now realize every airplane that had gone up in the air was dumping crap on our head. Every single nuclear waste dump also landing on our head. Every single nuclear test dumping on our head. So it was not the pristine Earth of 150 years ago, but it was still night and day difference between 72 and now. If you can compare it with the next few images that I have, and again, go to the left-hand side of the page and just type in the Earth before chemtrails, or you are now breathing ethylene bibromide. You'll see some pictures, but you can probably find these anyway. And it's pretty darn shocking, the drastic changes of, and I realize NASA is showing us some fake-ass pictures, but there is a difference between what they used to show and what they're showing now. Now, blood testing, everywhere. Picture where you are, and just put your mind to everything you know or have heard of. So everywhere. Barium is 150 times higher than safe in your blood right now. And did you know that you had toxic levels of barium and aluminum who actually combine, make a new element? And of course, in their infinite stupidity, they decided to line the nuclear reactors with aluminum. The men that I've told you about, who told them don't use this nuclear stuff, said, especially if you're going to use this stuff, don't line it with aluminum, because it will link to barium and there'll be a problem. Well, da-da-da-da. Easton, we have a problem. Anyway, a number of people living in Arizona have discovered that they have aluminum blood levels or barium of around 350 times higher. Now it says 150 in the article, but I'll put up some links later that says 350 times higher than the amount considered safe. Many are now experiencing classic symptoms of barium poisoning, which I didn't even know there were classic symptoms. But barium damages your immune system, causes dose-related muscle weakness, up to total paralysis, including heart and lung muscles. Now, with the incredible amount of multiple sclerosis in Canada. Canada is the worst place on this planet for it. Our high altitude and our lack of the right kind of solar radiation, plus this, because of course anything in the atmosphere on the planet goes north, could be part of the reason why the people in the far north, and this is like all around the world, are so sick right now. And these are people who fought this off for the longest time because they were eating so much fish. And yes, the fish are having a very hard time right now. If you can get fish, you're lucky. But they live in very cold water, so they have immune systems like we don't even know. These are some strong bad boys. Now, Arizona, like the rest of this planet, has been experiencing heavy chemtrailing since 1997 specifically, and there's good reason to suspect there may be a widespread problem with toxic levels of barium and aluminum worldwide. Now, life expectancy, which you would think has risen, has actually dropped to 69 years in the United States. Now, how much is 8 years of your life worth? In 2003, life expectancy in the U.S. was 77.6 years. The drop to 69 years since 2003, a drop of 8 years in less than 6 years, is pretty friggin' startling. Now, this period of time just happens to coincide with a time where there has been non-stop spraying of chemtrails, coast to coast, north to south, almost daily basis. And there's plenty of scientific research proving that any increase in airborne particulates causes a corresponding increase in death rate of the exposed population. So, in my opinion, chemtrails are a glaringly obvious factor in this significant drop in lifespan of us, everything. Now, when we talk about humans, let's go back to the basics, because I said a couple things that people question me on, and that's awesome. Question me on stuff. I'm not the knower of all things, although I would like to be the knower of all things. When I said we're related to everything, in the beginning, there was who? Adam and Eve. When I tell you what Eve means, you'll laugh your butt off. But everything we know of is made of atoms. They put code in everything. That's why I'm saying we're related. I've been talking to quite a few people the last couple weeks, talking about their alien heritage. This good Earth, before she got here, traveled through space, probably through time, what we've learned about how our eyes work and how energy is exchanged on the very basic level, how consuming happens, how you start to eat, how you start to live, and our basic ideas that life is not what we've been told. Baby doesn't have a heart for 8 days at least, so it's dead in you. Officially it's dead, but we know it's not dead. So I'm going to ask you to open your mind a little bit. Our Earth, traveling through biospheres, traveling through all those tubes that connect all the planets and all the star systems, especially sun to sun to sun, which has been proven. And our eyes, too, cones and tubes, work the same way. Our Earth would be carrying and collecting data, information, biogenetic data, until she stops, settles with our sun, water, which we know now travels throughout space on its own, seemingly, and then we're getting barraged with Lord knows what. Plants from Venus, bugs from Mars, probably great big bugs, and everything else that got here. So yes, absolutely, I'm with you. You are an alien. Does that make you not human? I'm sorry, boys and girls, it does not. So when you send me the messages saying humans are bad, humans, there are some people on this earth right now who have never had contact with the outside civilization. There are humans on this earth that have had contact, but still have never lived like us, even on this day and age. They are human. They are unadulterated human. These are Gaia's children. I didn't talk about that. And probably protected by her to stay safe all this time. And we know that the ones that have come out to meet us, it takes usually about 5 years before somebody's corrupted completely. They take them to university, it's done. It happens. So, us as humans, we know there's a couple of things that have made us very strong. One of them, chemical compound, DHA, could have been what sparked our brains into a change. Although I don't see much difference between us and, say, a dog. They have exactly the same emotions. I would say exactly. Not kind of, not sort of, not like us, but us. They're just more horizontal. So the people who are living closer to the land, in the desert, in the forest, by the rivers, maybe underneath the waters, who have not been mutilated in the way that we have been by absolutely everything. All this intoxication of everything. The chemtrails, which I'm going to continue on. They have more immunity now. When those trees go down and they no longer have our brothers and sisters, the reason that we're even on this planet is because of the trees. There would be none of us without them. So the ones living surrounded by trees, stronger. The ones surrounded by very, very cold waters, stronger. The ones who can still eat fish, especially cold water fish that doesn't have 3 heads right now, stronger. We are in trouble. There's no way around it. We're in trouble. And this widespread chemtrail sickness that is now going on in Idaho, they've even found sedatives in the chemtrails. Now that is not an accident. That can't be an accident. Unless our waters are no longer doing the distillation process, which is basically why we get rain, that there's so much toxins in our urine and everything else that this water is no longer filtered. I don't know. There's a possibility of that. If we're at that point, I don't know, someone ordered me a bottle of wine and a pack of smokes, because why even stop? Let's hope they're just spraying us and we're not at the point where, no, it's too late. Okay, so according to a report published in 2006 in the Idaho Observer, a lab report found the following samples of fallout: bacteria including anthrax and pneumonia, 9 chemicals including acetylchloride, chloride. I think that's nail polish remover, isn't it? 26 heavy metals including arsenic, lead, barium, mercury, uranium, nice, 4 molds, fungi, 7 viruses, nice, 2 cancers, 2 vaccines, 2 sedatives. Now, are they spraying that on us? Or again, is the one thing that I fear really happening, that our filtration system is now broke as well? Now, an Arizona doctor spoke out after finding high levels of barium contamination in all of his patients. Not some, not 70%, all. He said patients are coming in with frequent headaches, sinus congestion, asthma, and ear infections. I attribute this to the chemicals which our government is spraying in our air. The hair analysis labs, which I run on some of my patients, are all indicating high levels of barium. Now, we read a report a couple years ago. This one young child, 4 or 5 years old, that lived in Hawaii, eating all organic diet, living in a house that was mostly wood, didn't have the carpets and stuff, also had all these high levels. Now, the doctor said that his own hair analysis indicated extremely high levels of barium. High levels of barium in our hair means that either barium is stored from digestion or their hair is being contaminated from outside source, like chemtrails. I am quite concerned with this violation of our environment by a government that denies it is even happening. One has only to step outside and look up in the sky to see our dollars at work. Now, the polymers, which are being linked to Morgellons. But again, as I've talked about before, and what's happening on the coast, part of it is parasites. Part of it is parasites because of the uranium, like depleted uranium used by American weapons, like the toxic bacteria sprayed by people in the Middle East when they want to kill other people. These combine and make something new. Now, chemtrail aerosol polymers look like hair. They look like bits of carpet almost. Now, a polymer chemist, Dr. R. Michael Castle, has studied this atmospheric polymer for years. He has found some of them contain bioactive materials which cause serious skin lesions, diseases when absorbed into the skin. He has identified microscopic polymers comprised of genetically engineered fungal forms. Again, go back to that T4 looking thing. With or without a face. I am not am not a face Nazi. Anyway, these are mutated with viruses. You make a new life form, it will find a way. Even if you make these things sexless, if you make them non-polluting, non-pollinating, so they're supposed to go out there or die, they're going to find a way. Now, the doctor says trillions of fungus, virus, mutated spores can secrete a powerful mycotoxin, and they are part of the air that we are now all breathing. That's everywhere you live. Now, if you're in a city, you need to be working harder. I'm not saying it's impossible. There are things we can do. There really are. But you need to be working, and you need to be taking this seriously. Now, Jan Smith has been suffering for years from Morgellons, nanotechnology. I realize some people, it gets your back up hearing this, but when you see the fibers and you know from our research that we've gone over that nanotechnology is very, very real. Now, she's been suffering for over 10 years now. Her impressive research and documentation has put her in the forefront of those working to unravel the mysteries of this new horrifying disease. The research and documentation presented is a must read, and I have it there for you. It's was published in Beforge News, Chemtrails, 2012. Worth reading. Now, before we were told just to throw away our Teflon coated pans. God forbid you heat them past 350. We know these things are going on. One of these things would not harm us that much. But it's the accumulation, it's the absolute bio-attack that we are undergoing that makes this really difficult. And gathering information from the universe so fast. I have absolutely no idea what I will be by late next year. All I can do from this point is to leave a very distinct trail. Then when people truly realize what we have been talking about truly means to the expansion of your existence, they can you can use your brain like a telephone. Call me, I'll answer. Because this is going on as much as the other. And we're going to go back and forth between the ma and the pa today. The up and the down, the left and the right. Bird needs 2 wings. Can't fly with just one. Now, what we are looking at is the completion of the flower of life. It truly means, and it becomes of no use really unless someone brings you the whole thing. If you have a piece of it, you're just looking at it. Ever brought a man or a woman half a flower? So the reality is just like always, the people who have brought forth this knowledge have brought it forth missing some vital pieces, mainly the understanding of what it truly does. And I will speak direct here. It's very clear that the world at large is under the paw or guarded by the lion. Feline beings, if you will. If you did not notice, the word for lion in Chinese is shi, or she. Further, you find the word feline connecting words like female, feminine, those kind of words. It's because it is becoming very clear how words are worlds, and they become populated, and what the netters become the mothers of this universe. In Hebrew Kabbalah, it states that the mother letters are Aleph, Mem, and Shin, or AMS. Eri and Iri are names for lion in Hebrew. So that traces the A of aristocracy. It goes back to the lion, which is very easy to see in Parliament since they brandish it everywhere as their seal. M is obviously the mother of all mammals, who generally have horns, such as rams and mammoths. S, of course, are the serpent mothers. When you want to trace the development of the life forms related to the crown of creation, you begin here, as all things stem from those trees. Tree is 3, so they equal each other when you just remove the H. To get deeper into this, the sun is a Merkaba, sending out a light code based on the language of light. You can actually witness the code in a slightly altered state of consciousness, actually crossing through the organic life. So this is not a theory. This code, in turn, programs the reality to be what it is, to the same torsion field that surrounds your body, which are called the Ari, or the aura. The aura, the torus, the flower of life, the Merkaba, all the same thing. However, the way they have been teaching those who follow such things how to operate it has resulted in almost no success, because they have been shown, or they've been showing and telling you pieces, so that the truth remains obscure and veiled. If that was the way, the true light, the only way, something that actually worked every single time, we would not be here right now. Someone would have got this, we all would have done it, and we'd have been off somewhere else. Since that is not the case, this is why I bring it up, it's not enough. Now the reality is Earth is a giant, malleable, growing, glowing crystal, as are your cells. Your cells are a liquid crystal. Always keep in mind, crystals grow like plants, and crystals are primarily programmed through light, laser, photons, by shaping the crystal to the form of the desired state. Sound is a secondary form of programming, since light actually makes a sound already. In the event that the field is programmed to the dodecahedron, which is, the dodecahedron, which is phi, then fighting ensues, as each element attempts to exercise control over the other in a constant cycle of wood losing to fire, fire losing to water, only to be absorbed by earth, etc. This is the cycle of energy through the combustion of duality, and they are all the exact same. The Taurus, the Sri Yantra, the Merkaba, the aura, the same thing. Now, beyond the pentagram field, you find only unhindered energy, such as those contained in the Torahs, the Sri Yantra, the Merkaba, the aura. Since these fields are all the same, it is easy for one who knows how to control them to alter their own reality or alter your reality. Remember, this field was created to send and receive, not just receive programming. It does both. Your eyes don't just absorb, they send. Everything in your body works this way. Everything in the universe works this way. We give and we take, but we've only been taught to take, the majority of us. We take and we take and we take, and sometimes we take so much it actually makes us sick. We become disconnected. The controllers hide this knowledge because they want to control everything. Like one-way street, leaving most in a position to only take commands. And I believe the beings that brought the knowledge to the ancient, well, I'm kind of thinking Asiatics, because at first almost everything was called Asia, like every continent. But it was later gained by the Egyptians. Originally used this field to create nests for the progeny, which were very advanced. Humans are advanced beings, no doubt, but few question the much more advanced spirit within and its vast future and its perhaps vaster past. How many things were we before we coalesced to become solid? How long did it take? Does the body have memory of its own? This body that took everything that's ever been to create. Do you think that your body is not sentient on its own? I think it is. And if you're messing with it, it's going to be pissed off. Now later, it appears a strictly etherical system became usurped by those carrying that pentagram, which appears to create flesh or matter through a mixture of fire, ho, metal, chin, wood, mu, water, shu, earth, tu, or TWO, which means dual. They go under the titles such as Sir, SR, meaning senior or older. It is clearly related to the serpent. Again, it appears they placed their dodecahedron, their web inside of the flower of life, lattice, the field, effectively netting the spirit only from the stance that it gives another access level. To make it more simple, it appears the artificial electromagnetic dodecahedral field surrounding this planet now, which was made through technology, is the net created by those who are wrestling for total control of humanity, which can only come through a constant reprogramming, biohacking, since the person is naturally in a more advanced organic skin that we call the aura. To further see this fractal, simply imagine the spirit and the body. The spirit has a flower of life, torsion field, around it, while the body of flesh is the dodecahedral, or the pentagram field. The spirit can then temporarily lose its connection with the universal field by suggestions of the pentagram field. Layman's terms, the spirit can be made to forget who it is by conflictive programming of the physical body. There is nothing new when you are under the sun. As it appears, most are under the dominion of the artificial sun until they realize this. This makes the type of beings involved in this level of interaction zoomorphically lie in serpents. It's Zurvan all over again. I'll talk to you about Zurvan. Now, something history keeps forgetting. But this time, we will not let mere symbolism distract us from the hidden mystery. Zurvan is a Persian god of infinite time, space, and fate. So he is the news. North, east, west, south, time and space. He's a deity. He's traditionally represented as being the nameless one, the name Zurvan. And I will put this link, I won't forget, being a title rather than what his name was. He was a being without gender. He was a being without passion and neutral in regard to good and evil. However, in certain strains of Zoroastrianism, Zurvan is also the father of a good deity, Ahura Mazda, and an evil entity. So it's the twins again. Angra Manu, also known as Ibrahim or Ahriman. I know. Some historians, as well as Helena Blavatsky, that we've talked about before, believe that Zurvan was part of the original teachings of Zoroastrianism, where other historians believe Zurvan was added to the Zoroastrianism later. Now, the earliest solid evidence for belief in Zurvan seems to date from the Assid dynasty that ruled Persia from 224 to 651. Historians sometimes refer to this various Zoroastrianism as Zurvanism. However, the term is misleading because it's likely that any Zoroastrians worship this guy. Worship is always reserved for one alone, not him. But Zurvan is mentioned in the origins of alchemy pretty much everywhere. All shamanic and all esoterica all over the world had a being that was lion and serpent. It speaks of early alchemists, Zosimus and Isis. And of course back to Sumerian gods and back to myths, and then back to South Africa and the Zulus, who had a lion king. He was from Mars. They wear him on their shield. Now Zurvan was linked to Babylonian astrology. Zurvan, the opposites are contained. The spiritual embodiment for this reconciliation of opposites, embraced by the Greeks and by Indian thought as well. India, that one. Now eventually he became known as Kronos, the father of time. He's that old. And I'm going to take a minute and give you a link, because this is a deity that we need to talk about. And if anyone's, I've got too many windows open, but if anyone could jump over to Revolution and put that up, be awesome. Okay? Because this deity is, he's running the show right now, and has for a long time. He's Kronos. He's pre-Kronos. He's the same guy. Now, Zurvanism is a now extinct branch of Zoroastrianism that had a divinity, Zurvan, as the first principle. So this is the primordial being, the creator, deity. A god of infinite time, space, and is, aka the One, the Alone, the deity of all physical matter. Zurvan is the parent of two opposites, representing the good God and the evil God. Zurvan is regarded as the neutral, the being without gender, also neuter, passionless, one whom there is no distinction between good or evil. He is the god of destiny, the god of light and darkness. He is the normalized, the rendition of the word. In Middle Eastern Persia, it appears as either Zurvan or Zorvan. Zar came from this. Zar, that word came from actually Eastern Africa tribe of women. We're getting to them soon. Getting to those soon. Okay, so time, old age. Now the two other deities, its children, were equal but separate divinities. The central belief was that one of them, Mazda, was a middle god, and the other one was angry, Manu, the fallen twin brother. Sound familiar, right? Now, Mazdians consider the divinity of Mazda, the transcendent, translucent one, also a creator. The central beliefs make Mazda the supreme god, and Manu, angry, the twin brothers. Again, there's always a twin. Now, although details of the origins of these beliefs in this system, it's also a summary of three opposing opinions: ascendance and acceptance. It's generally accepted that this is a branch of a greater branch, an older branch, that they don't even know where it came from. This religion enjoyed royal sanction for as long as we can tell. Zoroastrianism is an adaptation of an antecedent, an ancient divinity of time. And one battle alone, is why you're not believing this. It's why everyone knows about Christ and not him. Because they almost won. One battle. But, don't attack Rome by water. It's, row your boat. One battle. Jesus won. Jesus had nothing to do with it, but his religions did. Now, the earliest evidence of this cult is in Rhodes. This religion was worldwide. It was huge. Everything that we believe now, and one day I'll just go right into it and just talk about this, but I wanted the long and short of it is that we are going through the same battle right now. It's Zurvan all over again. Whatever they change him to, and the good God and the bad God, who are still the sons of God, both equal, or brothers. How this reflects in any reality that is going on is the people are under the paw of the Son God of time. That's who that guy is. A lion serpent. The controllers of modern Christianity still took bits and pieces of this and put it in every religion. So now, know this, because they do. And they feature Jesus as the lion of the son of the tribe of Judah. But he is also the brazen serpent. The lion serpent again. Believers worship on Sunday, which is also called Domingo, or the Day of Dominion in Spanish. So now hear this. This is not dualistic, but mature. Know where you are and what is going on, or remain stagnant in the current state of consciousness. I'm going to tell you that the previous inhabitants of this planet, who are now hyperdimensional, have taken many spirits across the universe and have placed them here for a time for various reasons. Teachers, tradesmen, breeding, warriors, prisoners, rehab, you name it. In some instances, whole soul groups, such as the Chinese, are here together, while in other cases only a few, sometimes even one kind of spirit from a particular sector of the universe is here, by itself struggling to stay awake. We are with you. And they have no clues of my plans. They pass through all the walls. I program this dream. This means to tell no one about things that they can do nothing about, as it only puts you and them in a worse position. Now think about it. However, if there is someone that can, do not delay in bringing them the message. Now that I know what I know, I've caught a glimpse of far more advanced geometry in these words and these worlds. However, what will one do with the one they are in now? You must graduate this earth and climb your spine. Sounds easy, right? It does. It sounds easy. It sounds like this is nothing. This is a piece of cake. But all of these things, as outrageous as it sounds, these nanotags, this smart dust, these sensor swarms, these swarm particles, nanoparticles, this smart dust, this nano weaponry, it's used for many things. But one of the major applications is targeting and tracking, because they're all about control. And the list of scientific publications, it's core to create these Morgellons, these nanotags. The function of Morgellons is to invade and cleave the DNA, collect data from the DNA, create a light signal for satellites, track you for satellites, change you as they will. And one more agricultural abomination of all of these scientists is they have made a bug with the Morgellons that has infected it and changed it. look up echelon, tempest. It controls, attacks, spies, infects. Anyone who is deemed a threat to this satanic cult, these are good guys, these are bad guys, and in charge of it all is someone who is neither and both. This is the picture being drawn by an infected. Why the infected? Because I'm counting myself as one. By DARPA, by MI666, by SAS, by NSA. They all know this. So, is this a lower interdimensional being? Is it a trans-dimensional being abusing, feeding off us to reproduce its own species of spawn? And I do kind of like that movie Spawn. Do you remember that one? They assimilate enough biophotons from the frontal lobes of us and our eyes, because anything we watch is also watching us equally. We give and we take. This is how we work. This is allowed. It is maintained by this psychopathic Nazi scientist. So happy hunting, you hybrid Sith killers. We're going to be right back. Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Turtle Island News with Tracey Kennedy. Now, I was going to go on and talk about chemtrails and stuff, but you guys are more interested in the God, so I'm going back to that. We'll finish with Zurvan and then go to the mother goddess thing. Sound good? Okay, so Iranian Zurvan is related to the Sanskrit word sarva and carries a similar Semitic field in describing a monastic deity, a one, the one, which is probably one of the oldest words and why we even had a one God, because it's completely against most of the beliefs of our peoples all over the world. Now, the earliest evidence of the Zurvan is found in the history of theology, attributed to Rhodes, around 300 BCE, as cited in Damascus's Difficulties and the Solutions of the First Principles. It describes a sect of Persians that considered space-time to be the primordial father of the rivals of the Oro, which is interesting. They remind me of the Ori that are being used in the Stargate story, you know those ones, but they're called the Oro Masties of light and the Airy Masties of darkness. Good guy, bad guy. Now, most of what is known about Zurvanism during that period came from a Christian Armenian and other Syriac sources. Now, the Qatar inscribed at the Kaaba, Sartush, and the Edict of Nars is only around native sources that reveal anything about this guy, later being the only native evidence because most of them were destroyed. Now, other Persian language commentaries on the religion in that period are all composed after the fall of the empire, so we didn't hear much. Now, Armenian and Syriac sources, so Syria, depict this religion as having been very distinctly Zarvanite. Later native commentaries, mainly Mazdian, with one exception, and do not even mention him at all. So it ended up going to the sons rather than the religion of the Father, who is both. Sound familiar? Now there's a Persian language source called the Doctors of Islam that have evidence of this ancient belief in it too. Now there's no hint of any worship of Zurvan in any of the texts later times. Even though the texts do exist today, some of them, of course, it's hard to find anything about him. It's about his son, his good son, not the other one. Also sounding familiar. So, the origins of this cult, now called a cult because, well, that's what things are called when another religion takes over. That the belief was about the divinity, the infinite Time Lord, was well established and enjoyed all royal patronage. One of the emperors of at least 241 to 272 BC, he worshipped Zurvanism and appeared to have enveloped as a cult, presumably in the spirit, and then later went to Greece and India after. It's not known if these sects were separate, people were worshipping them at the exact same time, if they knew about each other, but it kind of looks like a lot of our religions that somebody went about and started teaching this. Now, in the classic, in the oldest that I can find, in the term that wasn't actually even coined until 1955, denotes a movement to explain an inconsistency described as the spirit twins, the children of this Zurvan, who's kind of reminding me of someone else, and it's going to drive me nuts till I think of it. Now, as a priesthood, sought to explain it, that if there was any kind of malevolent spirit or benevolent spirit, these were twins, that they had a father who existed before them, and the spirit and the priesthood said, Zurvan, that there must be time because he is infinite, as being the only possible absolute from which twins like this could proceed. And every other religion seemed to like it, because every other religion after that had a good guy and a bad guy. Now, the Zurvanite twin brothers doctrine also evidence in all of their creation myths that it is a classic form of myth. It doesn't contradict any model of the origin or evolution of the universe, where this model kind of starts them all off. It may well be, as proposed by many, that this cosmology was the first Chronos cosmology, portrayed as infinite time and the father of time. Not to be confused with Chronos, the Titan, and the father of Zeus. This is another guy, an older guy, whom the Greeks equated with Ahura, that's interesting, that name, or Ormuzd. Now, the classic model of creation, preserved only in non-Zoroastrian sources, is in the beginning, the great god Zurvan existed alone. I can't find what he was doing, but he was just alone. He desired offspring that would create heaven and hell and everything in between. Zurvan sacrificed for 1,000 years, which is odd since he was alone. But I don't know, maybe he cut himself or something. Not fighting, didn't write the thing. Now, towards the end of this period, first the androgen, Zurvan, began to doubt the efficiency of sacrifice. And in the moment of doubt, the two twins were conceived. Orzmud and Abrim. Orzmud for the sacrifice and Abrim for the doubt. Upon realizing the twins were to be born, Zurvan resolved to grant the firstborn sovereignty over all creation. Orzmud perceived Zurvan's decision, which he then communicated to his brother. Ahim, how do you say it? I've got a couple different translations of it. One it's A-H-R, man. Ahrim. Then preempted Ormuz by ripping open the womb and emerging first. They're saying, that's it, I'm getting out of here, I'm going to be firstborn. Now, reminding of the resolution to grant Abrim sovereignty, Zurvan conceded limited kingship for a period of 9,000 years, over which Ormuz would rule for all eternity. Christian missionaries considered this doctrine to be exemplary of Zoroastrian faith, and it was similar texts that reached the West. I know it's one of the creepier ones. It is. Now, all the myths that we could find that Zurvan also had a mother, Nar, a lady of flames. He also loved a Hindu goddess, Parvati, which is odd because you're supposed to be living alone. But, you can't argue with a god. Anyway, Nar died from giving birth. Maybe he made them. I'm not sure. Now, it's convoluted. It's very hard to follow, but, we're going to find any kind of myth that's not going to be hard to follow. Basically, he had two sons. One to worship heaven, one to worship hell. And that they would forever fight. One would be given dominion over the other. And hence is the story of our lives. These are the days of our lives. Now let's go back to in the beginning. When I first started talking about Our Lady of Heaven, the Queen of Heaven, in medieval times, and it looks like everywhere on this planet, first there was the goddess Diana that they spoke of. Well, that's more recently. But she was also greatly feared as a witch. It was believed that they could cast curses on men, worshippers of Diana, change themselves into animals and fly. They believed that they would be in league with the devil, of course, who probably came from these guys, and plague upon fellow citizens. They are also believed to be just women. Now, in contrast, we have the worshippers of the Christian God, with the big G, following the path of virtue. They were obedient followers of the one true God, again, his glorious Son, Jesus this time, who was the very personification of goodness and mercy and light and love. Hug me, I'm religious. Now, they were saved from their inherent tendency towards wickedness, called to do good works, promised a place in heaven at the end of it all. Their priests were, of course, just male. All this misogynistic mythology tends to obscure the fact that God of the Bible and the, again, alleged goddess of the witches share several important, surprising traits. They both came as a trinity. They both absorbed other deities over time. Both became uber gods. And perhaps most surprisingly, they both have had, or do have, breasts. This is a long essay that I was going to just save. I thought, it's too boring, no one's going to hear it, but you're hearing it now. So Diana absorbs other goddesses on the way to coming Queen of Heaven. So, original goddess of the woodlands, the maiden huntress who spurned romance and men in general. She preferred company of 9-year-old girls, maiden nymphs, and her hounds. She was identified by the Romans as being the same as Greek Artemis. Artemis is the daughter of Zeus and the twin sister of Apollo. Shortly after being born, she helped her mother, Leto, deliver her brother. Because of that, she gained a reputation as a comforter and the aid to childbearing women, which seems almost paradoxical given her refusal to become a wife or a mother. Now, Artemis was probably not the original lunar goddess. However, her character began to change over time as assimilated two other goddesses into her personality. They were Hecate, the queen of the night, and Selene, the moon goddess. Hecate was a goddess of the threshold. So this is the guardian of the gate. It's got to be the same myth I've told you guys about. This one could be found at the crossroads, in doorways, in graveyards. Dogs were sacred to her, especially black ones. So this is the myth of the guardian of the gate with the two dogs. Like, not our two dogs, but who always has two dogs. This is the hellhounds. Now, Hecate, yes, a woman. Hecate, depicted in the tale of Jason and the Argonauts as a helper to the wicked witch, Medea, a willing accomplice to murder and mayhem in general. However, this may be a demonization of another earlier benevolent goddess. She is also identified as tender-hearted, the torch-bearer, the light-bearer, or light-bringer, Aileen, my middle name. It is her sight who hears the maiden goddess Persephone's cry when the world god Hades kidnaps her. Her sight helps Persephone's mother, the grain goddess Demeter, find her daughter in the underworld. Diana merges with Hecate, becomes the goddess of the night, an identity made complete when she assimilates the moon goddess into her person as well. Selene is a titan of the generation before the Olympian gods came to power. It is she who carried the moon into the sky, each night in a chariot pulled by white horses. These three, Diana, Hecate, Selene, were represented as the Trinity, the three gods in one person. Now, the gorgeous statue of Diana that I had, the one, she's a black goddess and she wears all white, and this is why you'll find black goddesses all over the world, because we all had this or something very close to it everywhere. But it represents another meager undertaken by Diana. This is the direction in which she was developing in the region of Asia Minor, so Turkey area, during the Roman Empire and pre-Roman Empire, at a time when Christianity was also starting to spread there. The Temple of Artemis, where she was worshipped, was one of the 7 wonders of the world. This Diana is represented with characteristics of the ancient goddess of the region named Sibyl. Sibyl was called by the Romans Magna Mater, the Great Mother. Sibyl is also the girl guarding your United States. She is believed to be the mother of all the gods, was known as the mountain goddess, the earth mother. The crown on top of her head signifies walls of a city, represents her power to protect people within the walls. Her many breasts signified nourishment. She offers her people as the earth mother. Ebony skin may signify the earth, or the fact that at that point we were all dark-skinned. Sibyl was, in late Roman times, already becoming the mother of all that exists, as one Roman hymn called her. Another late Roman hymn quoted the myth of the goddess, the evolution of an image. The food of life. Thou metest out eternal loyalty, and when life has left us, take our refuge to thee. Thus everything thou doest and dolest out returns to thy room. Rightly thou hast called the mother of the gods, because by thy loyalty thou hast conquered the power of all the gods. Verily thou art also the mother of the people and the gods. Without thee nothing can survive or thrive. Thou art powerful, of the gods art the queen, and also the goddess. Now I like the older stuff myself. It's more erotic. I kind of like the Anki one. She got him drunk and stole his shit. I don't know. I like it. I like it a little bit better. But anyway. Artemis, Diana, Sibyl. Morphed from the greatest of the gods to the one and only God. Given enough time and less serious competition for the role, we'll never know. But another god grabbed the golden ring. So then, later, much later, we had God versus goddess. Artemis receives a brief mention in the New Testament when her worshippers resisted the preaching of Paul, of the Jewish Christian, who took on the mission of spreading Christianity teachings through the Greco-Roman world, which is really weird because you're going to find a lot of Pauls from the Middle East. But okay, I'm going to let that go. Now, allegedly, he was confronted, and this led to a riot. As the author of the book of Acts report, about the time there arose a great disturbance about the way. A silversmith named Demetrius, who made silver shrines of Artemis, brought in a lot of business for the craftsmen here. So again, part of her story, they're going to be calling the other guys the greedy ones. We were sitting here worshiping our God, minding our own business, and those other guys who were selling stuff got mad. Sounds like all the stories we hear now. Now he called them together, along with the workers and related trades, and said, "You know, my friends, we have received good income from this business, and you see and hear how this fellow Paul has convinced and led people astray. and in practically the whole province of Asia. He says that the gods are made by human hands, or no gods at all. There is danger. Not only will our trade, we will lose a good name, but we will also lose the temple of the goddess herself. The great goddess Artemis will be discredited, the goddess herself, who is worshipped through the province of Asia, and the world will be robbed of her divine majesty. So they heard this. Of course, they were furious, began shouting, "Great is Artemis!" Off with their heads. Okay, they didn't really say that, but they probably said something like that. So soon the whole city was in an uproar. The people seized Paul's traveling companions from Macedonia. All of them, because you're going to meet a lot of guys named Paul in Macedonia. Okay, moving on. All of them rushed into the theater together. Paul wanted to appear before the crowd, but they weren't having it. Some of the officials of the province, friends of Paul, sent him a message begging that he did not go to the theater. The assembly was in confusion. People were shouting. Most of the people didn't even know why they were there. Jews in the crowd pushed Alexander to the front. They shouted instructions to him. He motioned for silence in order to make a defense for the people. They realized he was a Jew. They all shouted in unison for 2 hours, "Great is Artemis!" The city clerk quieted the crowd and said, "Fellow people, doesn't all the world know that the city is a guardian of the temple of the great Artemis and her image, which fell from heaven itself?" That's cool. I didn't know that. Therefore, these facts are undeniable. So you need to calm the hell down. Don't do anything rash. You have brought these men here, and they have neither robbed temples nor blasphemed the goddess. If, then, Demetrius and his fellow craftsmen have a grievance against anyone, the courts are open. There are protocols. They can press charges. If there's anything further that you want to bring up, there will be legal ramifications. At which time, an image fell from heaven. It was a black meteor, which was worshipped as the image of the goddess Sibyl. The confrontation described in this passage seems unlikely in Christianity's early days to even get in there. So it was important. The popularity of this merged Sibyl, Diana, Great Mother. Now the fallen star, which I will read to you in just about everything, this is the jewel from Satan's crown. So this means he was a she. Sibyl became Satan, the bad guy. Now the two religions would definitely clash a couple times as Christianity gained more significance. Christianity won, of course, one battle, changed everything. History records that the temple of Artemis was torn down 401 AD. That's when it was won. So, this goddess changed and became the god of the Western world. We got Yahweh. Yahweh absorbs the other gods on his way to becoming the king of heaven. Just as Diana probably had humble beginnings out of some forest grove somewhere, Yahweh got his start amongst some desert tribe. Who was this God who became God? Some think he was originally the god of the Midianites, people among whom Moses found a wife. It is in Midian that Moses encountered Yahweh in the form of a burning bush. However, he originally came from Yahweh, like Diana, forming a pattern of absorbing other deities in his way to become the uber god. In the Iron Age, occupants of Israel had a reputation as creators of monotheism, but objective biblical scholars, the ones without religious motive behind their research, believe that religious records indicate that this development was very slow. To be blunt, most of the Israelites, through most of their history, were polytheists. This is simply not a matter of falling out of a habit of taking on foreign religion. However, the Israelites were probably themselves Canaanites. Their original gods would have been Canaanite gods. The most prominent of these would have been the father El, Saturn, mother Ashtarah, Baal, the storm god, his sister the warrior Ant, and his spouse Ashante or Azeroth, the queen of heaven again. Most of these, of course, mentioned by name in the Bible. During Yahweh's long bid for supremacy, some of these rivals were demonized. Others were just assimilated. Baal and Yahweh often appear as competitors in Jewish affection. In the Bible itself, Yahweh also borrowed his metaphors from Baal. In Psalms, he became the rider in the clouds, the storm god like Baal. He parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under his feet. Psalms. Baal's sister, Ant, or Annette, the warrioress, is not mentioned in the Bible. However, some of the more unpleasant, bloodthirsty warrior imagery given to God was borrowed from her. She may have been Mars. It is also comparable to the descriptions of her in the Epic of Baal. Deuteronomy, for example, God says, "I will make my arrows drunk with blood, while my sword devours the flesh, the blood of the slain and the captives and the heads of the enemy leaders." Isaiah, the devouring of blood, drinking, is left to the enemy. "I will make your oppressors eat their own flesh. They will drink their own blood, as with wine." Compare Ant's delight in battle. For Annette's hand is glory, for knee-deep she plunges in blood of soldiery up to the neck in gore in the troops. Until she is sated, she smites in the house, fights between two tables, shedding of blood of soldiery. She is also described as gleefully stacking up the heads of the enemies. So perhaps the most obvious God merger here between the two father gods. The Bible refers to God primarily with two ways, two different names, Yahweh and El. But El is the father god of the Canaanites, a bearded old god, the king of the gods. There is no reason, outside religious apologies, to think the Canaanite El is a different person than the Hebrew god El. Even more interesting, the particular El who made a covenant with Abraham was called El Shaddai. El Shaddai is translated into English as God Almighty. Scholars now agree that this translation is what I like to call wrong. What they do not agree upon is what might be the correct translation of El Shaddai or El Shaddai. The majority opinion is that this means the god of the mountain, or the old man in the mountain, where those the guys got really stoned on hash and, like killing people crazy. Pants. But anyway, God of the mountain, which makes perfect sense given that the old daddy El of the Canaanites lived in a mountain where he held council with 70 gods. There is, however, a second opinion, which would, if it is true, revolutionize everything that we understand about God. Now, according to Professor David Ball, interesting name, the more likely interpretation of El Shaddai is God with breasts, which brings me to my next point. God with breasts. The word Shadu in Akkadian means mountain. The word Shad in Hebrew means breast. One of these is likely the root of El Shaddai. But is he the God of the mountain or the God with breasts? I think the likely answer is he is both. So let's backtrack a little bit, starting with a timeline of major events relevant to determining who El Shaddai is. First, Father Abraham left Ur in Mesopotamia, where they spoke Akkadian, moved to Canaan, aka the land of milk and honey. Subsequently, he began the family from whom all Israel descended. During his exciting life, he had the distinct honor of personally encountering a God who called himself El Shaddai. Now, either Abraham was real or not is a matter for debate. But his lifetime, legendary or real, would have been around 2000 BC, give or take a couple hundred years. Abraham begat Isaac. Isaac begat Jacob, aka Israel. Jacob begat Joseph, who led his family to Egypt when the milk and honey dried up for a while. All of these patriarchs of Israel were blessed by El Shaddai, a fact recorded in pretty flowery languages, being fruitful and multiplying, and El Shaddai in Genesis acted like a fertility somewhere around 1413 BC, 1400, 1300 BC. The whole Egypt thing turned into be kind of a bad deal, and the Israelites were led out of there and back towards Canaan by Moses. This famous leader, who again, either real or legendary, encountered a God too. He introduced himself as a flaming bush as Yahweh. This is a desert deity. We are assured by a later priestly editor was identical to the God whom Abraham interacted with, the God who spoke to Moses and said to him, I am Yahweh. To Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the first, appeared as El Shaddai. But I will not make my name Yahweh known to him, says in Exodus. Well, thank goodness. Got that freaking settled. Some centuries after they decided and finally settled in Israel, folks decided they wanted a king. One of the most famous of these was David, which is once again a name you wouldn't think you're going to find down there. And it may have been David's time, around 1000 BC, that everyone thought that they ought to start writing this stuff down in case you're going to have to say it later. Now, after that, a number of books were written and rewritten and spliced together with over several centuries. Some things weren't written down until after Israel was completely justified by Assyria, and the Babylonians sacked Judea, southern kingdom in which Jerusalem stood then, and took everybody who was off to Babylon. Now the priestly editors put a lot of Jewish or Hebrew Bible together around 500 BC. Some say much later. I'm one of them, but I won't argue. Later text, El Shaddai appears as a war god, completely consistent with Yahweh. The older conception, says Professor Al, was probably the one associated with the fertility in Genesis. One of the oldest of these is the blessing conferred upon Joseph, the prince amongst his brothers, by his father Jacob, who was on his deathbed. Jacob says his favorite son will be blessed. Because of your father's God, who helps you, because of the Almighty Shaddai, who blesses you with blessings of heavens above, and the blessings of the deep that lies below, and the blessings of the breast, Shaddayim, and the womb. That's Genesis. Now notice the pairing, Shaddai with Shaddayim, the word for breast. Could this be the original meaning of Shaddai, the one who blesses with his breast? If so, we are in some very strange territory here. 1,000 years have passed between the time when Jacob gave his blessing and the time when it was recorded. The author is deliberately making some wordplay here. Why? She asks herself questioningly. Is he carrying on an old but forgotten tradition, or making an allusion that would be accepted by his reader in his own time? I think we should keep in mind archaeologist William Dever's assertion that Yahweh and El were believed by their worshippers to have been married to a woman, Ashra. This goddess Ashra, or Asherah, often mentioned in the Bible as one of the false gods of other peoples, was wrongly worshipped by the Israelites. Modern archaeological evidence suggests, however, that she was actually a local goddess, a mother goddess of Canaan and Israel. Surprisingly, two separate places. Now, the wife of both El and Yahweh. I like her. I like her a lot. Now, hear the archaeologist speaking about those discoveries, and learn more about Asherah, because I can talk to you about her if you want to know more. But she had really big breasts, and she offers them to her devotees. Now imagine believing in a God who would literally suckle you with her breasts. Asherah offers nourishment to her people. Could be symbolic. But she is the source of life and an aid to mothers, in much the same way as the Uber Diana. Does El Shaddai have the same power? After conferring blessings of breast and womb upon his son, Jacob goes on to talk about the blessings of the ancient mountains and the bounties of the everlasting hills. we have seen this combination and associated with magna matter. Is it possible that El Shaddai combines them as well? And again, when I was talking about before our worship of cows used to be huge and red and had horns, which later became the bad guy that we see in movies like, just about anything, but, like Legend. Becomes this big red guy, but I'm telling you, it's a big red cow, and it's the mother goddess, who later became the bad guy Satan, god of the underworld. But anyway, it turns out Shadu is Akkadian for mountain, comes itself from an earlier Akkadian word for breast. Isn't it possible that it means both? And I like this argument. In fact, it could be taken a step further. If you are going to have a monotheistic God, why not give him, her, the trademark traits of both the mother and the father goddess? Why not give this God by a name which immediately calls to mind the father of the mountain and the mother of the breast? If God, as El Shaddai, takes his name from both the mountain and the breast, perhaps he has assimilated Ashara. Now, like Sybil, El Shaddai is the mountain and the breast, the Mother Earth, feeding her people, making them fertile. And a monotheistic God must be more than a father to his people. Which brings us back to that old guy. But he needs also to be a comforting mother and a source of life, so fertility to his people. He needs to be not just one God, but God des, a transcending gender being. Sometimes he succeeds in this tradition. For example, Isaiah, God says, as a mother comforts her child, I will comfort you. When he fails to do this and becomes too much the angry bearded man in the sky, he has to be balanced in Christian traditions by an ever merciful Mary, to whom Diana's titles of Queen of Heaven and the Mother of Gods are given. Now, in the long journey towards monotheism, Goddess eventually lost out to God. Asherah was largely forgotten as Diana. Diana became the goddess of the witches and not the god of the Western world. God's breasts were forgotten. Perhaps his beard grew too long for them to be noticed anymore. Now, there is a really interesting trailer for a documentary, a project on Aphrodite in original homeland of Cyprus, and I'm going to put that up for you. But she's holding very similar kind of things. So she changes, or he changes, but I'm saying that these are the exact same gods. Same guy. This is El. There's one God, and at first this God was both. Not one, but both. Like Adam was not... Well, it's a play on words. Adam's God. We're going to leave Adam. I've talked about him before, but... We go from the lost bride to this. They worshipped her under every green tree, according to the Hebrew Bible, what the Christians call the Old Testament. The Bible also tells us her image is to be found for years in the Solomon Temple, where woman wove hangings for her in the temple and the forest grove. Her image was apparently made of wood. Since the monotheistic reformers demanded it be chopped down and burned, it appeared to have been a man-made object, but one carved of a tree. Perhaps the image was a stylized tree of some kind. This could be why we get the tree of life thing, because she was made of wood. The record suggests that Asherah was always the mother goddess of Israel, the wife of God, who has unearthed many clues to her identity. She was worshipped throughout Israel, stood as a nation. In many homes, images decorated household shrines of her. So who was she? This lost goddess of the Hebrews. Why is she no longer worshipped in our Judeo-Christian belief system? Because she emphasizes her breasts, suggests a role again, fertility goddess, but her stance represents nature. Her nature as a mother in general, no doubt aided the concern of mothers, including conception, childbirth, but she was probably also the mother of all, a comforter, a protector in an uncertain world. Inscriptions from ancient Israel tell us Yahweh and his Asherah were invoked together for personal protection. Her identification with trees suggests Asherah was in fact the mother nature, a figure we remember in English, but most languages have those exact words. Unfortunately, we have lost as a part of our mainstream religions. She was, in other words, everything you would expect the feminine half of a divine creative duo to be. She was a great mother. Her image was lost to us, not by chance, but by deliberate action of fundamentalist monotheists. First, her images were torn. Her stories were rewritten. Her name erased, forgotten. In fact, her name appears 40 times in modern translations in the Bible, but not at all in the first English translation in the King James Bible, since no one knew who Asherah was anymore in 17th century when the King James Version was created. Her name was translated as a grove of trees, or tree, or images and groves, without understanding that those trees and groves of trees represented the mother goddess. Okay, I'll take you on this ride next time. That was fast 2 hours. Love you guys. Join me Thursday, and we'll talk about more of this. Camp trails suck. That's what